Hey everyone, welcome back to Reason and Theology, doing an episode here for our playlist Reason and Reactions, where we review various things that are going on in Catholic news in the world at large. And specifically, we're going to take a look at a situation with Vatican News removing the artwork from their website, artwork of the accused abuser, Father Rupnik. We've talked about Rupnik a number of times, so I already have kind of a plethora of episodes on his situation. You're welcome to go and watch those. But just to catch you up to speed, he's been accused of some pretty horrible things for several decades now. And it really does appear that the Vatican has been inadequate in addressing problems related to him. And for quite some time, the church has still promoted his artwork, and it still is promoting his artwork all over the world and at very important places and shrines. Some are starting to try to dial that back. Others are a little hesitant to do so, making arguments in favor of still displaying his artwork. Vatican News has now made a sudden shift and taken down a recent displaying of his artwork from their website. We're going to talk about that, but also we're going to talk about how this isn't the full story. We're going to talk about what they haven't removed so far. Let me share my screen just so you can see quickly here a brief article about this news that you may or may not have heard about just yet. Vatican News, the website, Vatican News removes Rupnik's art from website. Here you can see a picture of Rupnik, the accused priest who is still in active ministry. The Vatican on Monday removed artwork by former Jesuit Father Marco Ivan Rupnik from its official websites. Digital images of the Slovenian priest's sacred art, which were frequently used by Vatican News to illustrate articles of the church's liturgical feasts, are no longer found on the digital news service. Catholic writer Amy Wellborn took to X to show screenshots of Vatican News's Memorial of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of the Church, article before and after Rupnik's accompanying artwork was removed from the website June 9th. Take a look at this. Here you have her account. It shows what it looked like before. You can see June 9th. And of course, we're right now in June 9th, right? Same day. June 9th. And then we have that Memorial of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of the Church. And it's a different display of artwork, no longer his specifically artwork. So that's what they're referencing here. Rupnik, who was expelled by the Society of Jesus the Jesuits, in June of 2023 for his stubborn refusal to observe the vow of obedience, is accused by about 24 women, mostly former nuns, of spiritual, psychological, and sexual abuse they allege has occurred over the past 3 decades. There's also an allegation that he gave absolution to one of his victims. One second. And as Father is reminding us here in the chat, Father Brown, his artwork is ugly. Good enough reason to remove it. I agree with you, Father. Thank you so much for that. That is correct. And I also agree with Jimmy here in the chat. Michael, let's get some super chats for all this work you're putting in today. I know I've done 2 patron-only shows today, and this is my 3rd show, and I got a lecture with CPU tonight. I'm working hard today. So yeah, super chat's definitely welcome. And by the way, hit that subscribe button too if you haven't already. Subscribe and the like button. I see a few people have already downvoted the video before it began, so try to help offset that. Okay, getting back to the matter. The recent changes to the Vatican News and Dicastery for Communication websites came soon after Pope Leo XIV met with members of the Pontifical Commission for Protection of Minors on June 5th. Within the first week of his pontificate, Pope Leo XIV met with Cardinal Sean O'Malley, Archbishop Emeritus of Boston, and President of the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. And he has been critical about displaying that artwork, Cardinal O'Malley. Several church leaders and Catholic groups around the world have increasingly called for the removal of sacred art created by the former Jesuit. On March 31st, the Shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes in France announced its decision to cover Rupnik's mosaics. Y'all remember that? We covered that a few months ago. The artwork that's found at the entrance to the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. So some people are starting to take his artwork down. Others have kept it up. Others argue in defense of keeping it up. Others are arguing against it. But here's what hasn't been removed. So they removed some artwork from the Vatican website, Vatican News website, not the Vatican website, Vatican News website. They removed some artwork of Rupnik. Here's what they haven't removed. They haven't removed Rupnik himself. Rupnik is still in ministry. Rupnik is still in good standing. Rupnik is still a Catholic priest in good standing and active ministry in the Catholic Church. Let that sink in. They have been preparing a canonical trial for him for years now. For years. In fact, they weren't going to have one. They said the statute of limitations has expired. Pope Francis intervened, lifted the statute of limitations, and went ahead and said, go ahead and go with this investigation. And let's go ahead and have a canonical trial. He reopened that. But it's still been years. Still no word on what's going on. We've been hearing for months, yeah, there's going to be a trial. Still no trial. They've removed his artwork, but they haven't removed him. I saw a comment from somebody, a couple people reacting to this news about taking down the artwork. One person says, why is this man still a priest in good standing with faculties? Yeah, this is a good question. Another person says, now all they need to do is remove Rupnik from the church. Not just his artwork, but him. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem. And that's why the article I'm about to show you, I have to agree with it. This is a superficial move. No, it's a step in the right direction. Wonderful. I commend that. I'm happy. But it's still kind of a day late, dollar short kind of thing. It's a little too little, too late. When are we actually going to get a real trial here on Rupnik? When is he going to face justice? Why is he still in active ministry with faculties in the Catholic Church, ministering to people after all he's done? Let that sink in. So I understand the desire to celebrate this as a victory, but I have to say, gosh, it's so sad that the Catholic Church is at the point where one has to celebrate this as a victory. Meanwhile, the man himself is still there, but this is celebrated as a victory. Our standards are so low, so low. That is just so sad. You know what that's like? That's like a spouse who cheats on you every day. A spouse who's constantly committing adultery every day against you. And you're like super happy, really happy that your spouse is no longer using your bedroom to commit the adultery and cheat on you, but is now using a different bedroom in the house to do it. Our standards are so low to celebrate this, frankly. But hey, yeah, sure. I guess it's a little bit better. I guess it's some good news compared to displaying the artwork. Yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing. But I don't know if this is really something to celebrate when he's still there. So until he's removed, until there's really justice here, I don't think that this is something that should really grab our attention and should really be something worth celebrating, because I feel like, the underlying issue is still here. Rupnik is still there. But yes, it's a step in the right direction because it recognizes that it's incredibly insensitive to display his artwork on the Vatican News website in light of the allegations. So incredibly insensitive to the victims. But you know what else is insensitive to the victims? The fact he's still in ministry. That's really insensitive to the victims, like super insensitive. So it's a step in the right direction for the victims to take it down. But don't you think the victims are still offended that he's still in ministry? Yeah, of course they are. Let's talk a little bit about this article here from the Pillar. Under the surface, what's next now for Rupnik's art now that he's offline? The decision, which has not been officially acknowledged or explained by the dicastery, came as social media users highlighted again how works by the accused serial sexual abuser were displayed on the Vatican's official website to illustrate upcoming feasts like Monday's memorial of Mary, Mother of the Church. The cycle of outrage over the continued use of Rupnik's work by official Vatican media had become a regular event following the disclosure of the extent of allegations against the artist in 2022, including that he sexually abused women religious as part of his creative process. Another one of the reasons why it needs to be removed. Some of this stuff was created in the context of the abuse. The Vatican's continued use of the images was reportedly or repeatedly cited by survivors of abuse and their advocates as a harmful and proactive act by the church, though the communications dicastery's own prefect explicitly dismissed the criticism and defended the practice last year. The apparent policy reversal has already been hailed by Vatican watchers as a notable shift in policy following the election of Pope Leo XIV 2 months ago. But while the removal of Rupnik's art has made headlines and has been hailed as a welcome shift in the Vatican policy, it's literally a superficial change, they say, albeit a highly visible one welcomed by survivors and their advocates. Absolutely. And I'm sure the survivors of this abuse are happy with this, but not fully happy because he's still in ministry. As the Leonine pontificate continues to unfold, 3 other decisions remain on the Pope's desk, which will weigh heavier on the Pope's mind and ultimately the Church's ongoing approach to clerical sex abuse. And speaking of Pope Leo and his involvement of this, I do frankly have to ask, what's taking so long? What took Pope Francis so long? And what is now taking Pope Leo XIV so long? Because I don't care if you're in there for a day. It doesn't take long to say, hey, let's go ahead and get this going now. It doesn't take that long. I guarantee he can expedite the process. 100%. Guarantee. The insistence on using Rupnik's artwork on the Vatican website had become, it can hardly be denied, an ongoing countersign to the reforms carried out during the Francis pontificate. Defenders of the image like Ruffini variously insisted that the art could and should be separated from the personal failures of the artist, and that it would be premature to remove them or even call for their removal while a canonical process against Rupnik was underway. And so he's going to argue like there's all sorts of artwork in the Vatican that was made by some pretty horrible people, does that need to be removed? I don't know if the, victims of any such a person, if they have victims, are around today and are perceiving this as validation of that individual, right? So I do think it's a little bit of a different situation. Neither of those defenses held water either with survivors, advocates, or impartial observers, if there could be said to be such people on the issue of sexual abuse. As his alleged victims have explained in stomach-churning detail, Rupnik was allegedly in the habit of incorporating violent, sadistic, blasphemous sexual abuse into the process he used to create his art. So the separation of art and artist is virtually impossible for his case. And I do have to ask, is that why his art is so ugly? Because he involved the evil in the process of making it? I would wonder. I think there has to be a connection. Is that why it's so ugly? Because it is really ugly. You have seen artwork from Rupnik, right? Maybe I'll show you an example. Remember this bad boy right here? Remember that one? This thing. Oh boy, for the Year of Mercy. It's part of his artwork. Here's some more here. Some more here. Some more here. Wowzers. That's interesting. Okay, so I think you get the idea of what his style is like, right? But while the grounds for removing Rupnik's art would appear to many to be obvious and well established without prejudging the outcome of his pending canonical trial, the continued official use of his work served as an ongoing reminder of how long that process is taking. Yeah. Why is it taking this long? What's going on here? Cardinal Fernandez, the prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, has addressed the grindingly slow process of Rupnik's trial, saying it has proven difficult to the point where months have gone by with no apparent change in status to impanel a tribunal of qualified judges for the case. I'm sorry, that's just without excuse. I'm sorry. I don't care what logistics are involved in finding judges. This is without excuse. Get it done. Get it done. Should take 1 day at the most. Get it done. Stop with the excuses. That difficulty stems from the decision to try the case away from the Vatican and unconnected to the DDF's internal, or to try the case away from the Vatican and unconnected to the DDF's internal roster of qualified canonists, according to the Cardinal. It is unclear if that condition is self-imposed or by the Dicastery to distance itself the Vatican from the case, or a judicial necessity because of Rupnik's personal Roman connections. Stop it with the excuses. Just get it done. Stop. If you can't find somebody in Rome, I guarantee you there's some guy out there who's qualified outside of Rome, and you can fly them in, take a few days. It's not long. These are excuses. This is what you say when you don't want to get it done, or when you're not taking it seriously. That's what you say. Leo could at any point revisit that decision taken by the DDF. Yeah, he could. Will he is the question. And as a canonist pope, he will be aware of the legally coherent ways he could expedite things, even assuming they are prudent rather than merely preferable reasons to keep the case away from the Curia. And by the way, he doesn't even have to abide by the legal conditions. He's the pope. He's above canon law. He can do whatever he wants. In any event, it says, it remains to be seen if taking Rupnik's artwork off the Vatican website is the first step of a new urgency to resolve the situation once and for all, or an easy decision with the secondary benefit of removing something which perennially kept Rupnik in the news cycle. I think it's just to do some damage control. I don't think that it's to somehow expedite the process and deal with this situation once and for all. I think that's a stretch. Taking it down from the Vatican website is something that can be done within a few minutes and is super easy. That has nothing to do with expediting his canonical trial. But at some point, Leo will have to consider how the Rupnik scandal erupted in the first place. Yeah, that's true. How it was allowed to drag on for so long. Yeah, also true. It's unclear and likely to remain so how much personal involvement Pope Francis had in the Rupnik case and the decisions to not publicize his 2020 excommunication, to allow him to continue to serve in various curial consultancy positions, and to initially refuse to lift the canonical statute of limitations on the other allegations against the priest. Now, eventually Pope Francis did. He did lift the canonical statute of limitations and opened up the trial and investigation against him. But the official narrative remains, at least for now, that all those choices were taken by the DDF, most of them before Fernandez arrived as prefect. Nevertheless, the Cardinal's own position at the head of the Dicastery has brought its own set of anomalies to the DDF's disciplinary section. When Francis appointed Fernandez to the role in 2023, he pointedly and publicly dispensed him for participation in the DDF's disciplinary work involving the sexual abuse of minors, though not cases like Rupnik's, which involve adults in the sacraments. That narrowly tailored carved out in the prefect's brief, keeping him involved in some but not all abuse cases, and has raised questions about his role, active or absent, in recent high-profile cases, which has raised serious canonical questions. While it's customary for new popes to retain heads of dicasteries, at least until the end of their 5-year terms, many will be watching to see what Leo makes of Fernandez's unique situation, whether it's a compromise he is willing to live with for 3 more years. Is he going to keep him on board, or is he going to go ahead and say, we're going to switch you out? We'll find out. If Leo chooses to make bringing canonical coherence to the Curia, especially on abuse cases, a priority, though a change or not at the top of the DDF could be far more significant than expediting Rupnik's case or getting his art off the Vatican website. Maybe. Why not just go ahead and do both, right? Whatever the Pope does or doesn't do at the DDF, however, Leo does have a pressing appointment to make on the issue of clerical sex abuse, a new president for the Pontifical Commission of the Protection of Minors. The outgoing head, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, has served in the post since the body's creation in 2014 by Pope Francis. While no official announcement has been made, the Cardinal turns 81 this month. and has already begun referring to his tenure in the past tense during interviews. So he already kind of knows the writing is on the wall and he's out the door. So Pope Leo is going to appoint somebody else soon. Under O'Malley, the PCPM has operated as self-consciously outsider's voice within the Curia on the abuse crisis. Under the American Cardinal's leadership, the commission was publicly credited with convincing Francis to allow prosecution of Rupnik to proceed. And given O'Malley had an audience with Pope Leo last month, it's highly plausible that the issue of Rupnik came up, including the communications dicastery continued use of his works, something the Cardinal has lobbied for change on before. So maybe Pope Leo had something to do with taking his artwork down from Vatican News. Maybe. Replacing Cardinal O'Malley at the PCPM may actually be the Pope's most pressing senior appointment to make, given the Cardinal's age, but also least straightforward. Speaking to the Pillar last month, O'Malley was frank about the continued resistance to the PCPM's work and even existence within the Vatican, a situation which has become more, not less complicated after Francis moved it under the umbrella of the DDF. O'Malley was equally frank about the difficulty in describing an ideal successor for this reason. So while admitting he had always considered the PCPM presidency to be a role best suited to a layperson, preferably a woman, but he was pragmatic too about the need for the commission to be led by senior clerics if it is to command any respect within the Curia. In fact, he noted the difference in effectiveness having a bishop serve as secretary rather than a priest had made. We cannot know what recommendations O'Malley may have made to Leo about picking his successor and boosting the effectiveness of the PCPM around the Vatican, but whatever decisions Leo does make will be much scrutinized and could end up saying as much as about what the Pope thinks of the state of his Curia more broadly on the issue of sexual abuse as it does about what he thinks of the commission itself. Yeah, so that's certainly going to be very telling to see, what appointments he makes. But as they're pointing out here in the article, really the situation of taking it down from the Vatican News is kind of a slight and superficial issue, given that he's still in active ministry. That's kind of like the big problem, the big elephant in the room. And I don't know how this could be really hailed as a significant victory until that issue is addressed. Seems a little superficial to me. But hey, you know what? A superficial change, better than no change at all, I suspect. So I certainly welcome it. Just wish there was more of it. That's all. Anyways, I hope that y'all found this to be informative. If you did, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Also, check me out at patreon.com/Reason and Theology, or right here as a channel member on YouTube, hit the join button. You'll get access to exclusive Patreon-only videos. I already did 2 Patreon-only videos earlier today. If you want to get access to those, go and check them out. That's going to do it for today. We'll see you later.